Welcome to this video tutorial from the National Union of Students, looking at creating charts in Excel using National Student Survey data. This tutorial is slightly different to previous videos as it's very practical. You'll need to use it in conjunction with the Excel workbook and pause frequently to undertake your tasks. You can replay sections as often as you like to ensure you've taken it all in. So, why charts? Charts help people to understand data quickly. You can often take one look at a chart and understand its point. They help to illustrate the point you're making. Charts are often more interesting than numbers and can brighten up a report or a presentation. Charts make the data more interesting and comprehensible to all audiences. Most charts share a basic characteristic, which is its axes. The x-axis along the bottom represents the known value, and the y-axis represents the unknown. So in our case, the known would be subject, course or demographic group. The unknown or variable would be satisfaction score. The first chart we'll look at is a line graph. This is used to show trends and correlation, but it can only be used when the x-axis shows continuous data. This means that the x-axis should show progression along a scale, such as for time, distance and temperature. This makes it less than ideal for subject or demographic comparisons, as these don't fall along a scale of related values. This line graph shows the UK average score for each section of the NSS from 2005 to 2015. This works because the x-axis has continuous data. Each point is 1 year and they're the same distance apart on the graph, making a visual representation of each section's progression over time. Okay, let's do a line graph. So you'll need to download your workbook and go to this page called Line Graph. The first thing you're going to do is select your data. So I want to make sure that I've got all my section headings and my years included as well, to make sure that my chart's labelled properly. So I'm going to highlight all of those up to 2014. You can see the last two columns are comparisons year on year, so we don't want to include those. So we're happy with our data. Oh, I've missed overall satisfaction, so make sure you've got them all. There we go. And we're now going to go to Insert and Charts, and you can see a little picture of a line graph here. So we'll click on that. You can either have it with markers or without markers or 3D. We're going to go for with markers just so we can see the points for each year. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to move my chart down and make it a bit bigger so you can see it better. We don't want it overlapping our data. There we go. So you can see that our line graph from before didn't really look much like this. And that's because there's a big area of blank space here that we really don't need. So let's get rid of that. So to do that, we need to click on the y-axis and right click and format axis. There we go. You can see the bounds here, the minimum and maximum are the top and bottom of that axis, and they're automatically set. But we're going to change that so we get rid of that blank space. So if you look at your data, you can see that there isn't a point that goes below 60%. So we'll make 60% the bottom of our graph. Turn 60% into a decimal, and it's 0.6. 0.6 in the minimum, and press enter, and instantly you can see a lot more from your graph than you could before. The next thing we're going to do is add a chart title. So to do that, you click on your chart title, highlight the words there, and then type in your own. So I'm going to go with NSS sections 2005 to 2014. There we go. The final thing we're going to do is we're going to move the legend. So the legend's at the bottom, and that shows you which colour each of your lines are. I want that over on the right, so I'm going to click on my legend and then click on right. There we go. Perfect. I've now completed my line graph. I could then copy and paste that into a report or presentation. Why not have a go yourself? I'd like you to pause the video now and create a version of the line graph you just saw using the data in your workbook. The next type of chart we'll look at is a bar graph. These charts can often be used interchangeably with a line graph. Have a look and see which displays your data more clearly. A bar chart compares the frequency of different values, so the number of people or things. The difference between a bar graph and a line graph is that bar graphs can be used with discrete data, whereas line graphs can't. This means that you can use them to compare different categories of thing, such as chocolate bars as below, or subjects or demographics in the NSS. This bar graph compares the average overall satisfaction for UK universities grouped by similar mission, size and student body. Track Group A is large research-intensive institutions with a medical school. B is smaller but still research-focused institutions, and C to F are more teaching-oriented universities, descending in size and research income. Group G is specialist arts and music institutions, and the FE average is all colleges. You can see the line across the middle of the graph is the UK average score for overall satisfaction. This bar graph compares one institution's question 23 and question 22 scores by subject. Subjects to the left of the graph are less satisfied with the Students' Union than with the university, and subjects to the right are more satisfied with the Students' Union than the university. Questions 22 and 23 don't correlate very well, but this can still be useful to identify courses and departments that's generally quite satisfied, but much less so with the Students' Union. So we're going to create our bar chart. If you go into the sheet that says bar graph, you'll see you've got a list of all your subjects, their overall satisfaction scores, and then the Students' Union score. The first thing we need to do is calculate the difference between the two. So I've added a column in for this called difference. So we're going to click into the cell we're going to do a calculation, and whenever you do a calculation in Excel, you start with an equals sign. So you type your equals sign, and then we're going to start the calculation. Now, because we want to compare question 23 to question 22, we're going to do equals question 23 minus question 22, and just click in the cells. Then press enter when you're done, and double check it. Yes, 87 minus 81, no wait, sorry, 81 minus 87 is minus 6. You can then duplicate the same formula all the way down by clicking and holding. At the bottom you can see it goes from a white cross to a thin black cross, and drag it all the way down there. So now we've got our calculations. So we don't need the actual question data for this graph, so we're just going to make sure we've highlighted all our subjects, and then press Control and highlight our difference column. Then we'll go to Insert, and you can either have a bar graph, which would put it this way around, or you can have a column graph, which would put it this way around. I'm going to stick with column for now. So there we go. And I will just expand this out a little bit so you can see it a bit better. There we go. Now you'll remember that my graph actually was sorted, so we're going to do that now. We're going to make sure that we select all our data, make sure it all stays together, otherwise the calculations will change and it will make no sense. So I've highlighted it all, and go over to the top right to Sort and Filter, and go on Custom Sort. And then I'm going to choose Difference, and smallest to largest is the way I've done it here. So there we go. So you can see on the left hand side of the graph they're less satisfied with the Students' Union than the university, and on the right hand side they're more satisfied with the Students' Union than the university. The final thing we're going to do is change the title of the graph. So again, where it says difference, just enter a title. So question 23 versus question 22 by subject, NSS 2015. And there you have it. Now it's time for you to give it a go. So pause the video here and create a bar graph in your workbook. When you've made it, think about whether this is useful to you and other things you could show in a bar graph. Radar charts are a highly visual depiction of data, enabling you to see the big picture but also focus in on anomalous areas. They're good for comparing different subjects or demographics on the same questions. Their use for the NSS has been pioneered in Students' Union land by John Berg from Teesside, whose wagon wheels are a wonder to behold. Here's a radar chart for an institution comparing questions 22 and 23 by subject. You can look for anomalous spikes, such as in architecture for the Students' Union, for civil engineering for both questions, and a positive spike for media studies who are satisfied with both. It immediately gives you some areas you might wish to look into in more detail. So for this one we're going to go back into the bar graph spreadsheet, and the first thing we're going to do is undo all the sorting that we did for the bar graph exercise. So again, keeping all the data together, highlight it all, there we go, and go back to Sort and Filter and just click Sort A to Z. It'll do that by the first column for you. There you go. So now you've got that, we're only going to use these three columns for our radar chart. We're not going to use difference. So if I make sure that I've highlighted my titles and all my subjects and data, there we go, and I go up to Insert at the top here, and you can see what looks like a spider web, so that's a radar chart. Go all the way down, you can either have one without markers, with markers, or a 3D version. I'm going to go for without markers because it's quite a complicated graph and I want to make sure you can see it. So now I'm going to select my chart and make it a bit bigger so that you can actually see what's going on with it. Lovely. And the only thing left to do is give it a title. So NSS question 23 and 22 by subject 2050. And that's it. It is as simple as that. Now, why don't you go ahead and make one of your own? We're going to create the wagon wheel I just showed you. Pause the video here and create your own. Bear in mind that it uses exactly the same data set as the previous bar graph. Consider which you find more useful and whether they show you different things. The final chart we'll look at is a pie chart, which is a bit different to all the others. Rather than representing frequency, pie charts depict a ratio or percentage relationship between the variables, and they must add up to 100%. Because NSS compares different percentages that don't add up to 100, you'd need to make some aggregations to use a pie chart effectively. For example, to create this pie chart, I ran a custom report showing the 20 lowest scoring institutions. I then coded these by region and counted the number of institutions from each, then converted that into a percentage of my 20. The pie chart I'm about to show you is slightly different. We're going to look at how many subjects are in each faculty. So to create our pie chart, we're going to go into the spreadsheet marked pie chart, and you can see we've got the same data as previously, but only the overall satisfaction this time. Now what we're going to do is create a pie chart of the 10 lowest scoring subjects by faculty. So the first thing to do is find your 10 lowest scoring subjects. So I'm going to again highlight my two columns all the way down there and go back to sort and filter, custom sort, and sort by overall satisfaction. I'm going to go smallest to largest so that the ones we're interested in are at the top. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are all we're interested in. I'm just going to insert a new row here to separate them out. The next step we need to do is to code all these subjects. So I've given you codes for a fictional university's faculties. So if it's in science and engineering, we'll put SE, arts and humanities, AH, and BU for our business school. So I'll just do that. So now that's done, I'm going to count how many subjects are in each faculty, and that's easier than you might think. So you'll see here I've got a box labelled count. So first of all, I'm going to count the number of subjects that are in science and engineering, and to do that we're going to use a function called COUNTIF. So start with equals and type COUNTIF and double click. The next thing it asks you to do is select your range, and that's the data that you're looking at. So we're looking at these. Hold down shift and select. Yep, and you'll see here the next thing it wants is a comma and then your criteria. So our criteria are if it's in science and engineering, and that will be SE. And we put it in quotes because it's not a number. Close your brackets and press enter. Excellent. We'll do exactly the same for arts and humanities. So equals count if, select your data, comma, and then in quotation marks AH, close brackets. And finally for business, count if, find my range, BU, and close your brackets. There we go. So now all we need for our pie chart is this little amount of data here. So we're going to select that and go to insert and see the pie chart here. So you can either have 2D, 3D, or a donut pie. Donut pie. I'm just going to select a simple 2D pie chart. Give it a decent title. So lowest scoring subjects by department. And the last thing I'm going to do is move my legend because I prefer it over on the right. So select my legend, right click format legend, and stick it on the right. There we go, there's your pie chart. Why don't you have a go? So now pause for the final time and create your pie chart. Thank you for watching. If you have any queries, please contact nss@nus.org.uk.